Hi everyone, welcome to today's session, Storytelling on a New Level, Elevating Your Presentations with Microsoft Sway. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Stephanie and I will be presenting the content today, and behind the scenes we do have Nathan Austin, who will be staffing the Q&A and producing the session. So if you have questions throughout the session, please feel free to post them in the Q&A panel, and Nate will try and answer them offline, or we will be opening it up at the end for questions. And if there's something that I can demo or we can talk through, we'll interject it then. So feel free to start posting those now. Awesome. All right, so today's session is really about Microsoft Sway and PowerPoint in presentation. So the purpose of today's session is we're really going through a prescriptive overview on how to create a Microsoft Sway and why. And ultimately, the biggest question is, why a Microsoft Sway over PowerPoint? That's the biggest question that we get asked, and we even have to challenge ourselves on. And we'll demonstrate how to set up a Microsoft Sway, how to share, how to embed, how to create interactive content within Sway, and that will really hopefully help demonstrate the use of Sway versus PowerPoint in different instances. And like we said, at the end, we're going to go ahead and go through some recommended actions, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So that's kind of a little bit of an overview of today's agenda. We have a lot to cover. We're going to try and get through as much as we can, and I'm going to go a little fast, but we do record these and we'll be sending out the recording after the session, as well as posting in our YouTube channel if you want to go back and take a look and slow it down if you're trying to recreate some of the steps. So here we go. Before we get started, we always like to do 1 minute about Mytech. So when we first started doing these sessions, people thought maybe we were a training company. So we just like to clarify that we're not a training company. We are a business and technology consultant company that really serves the small to medium-sized businesses and organizations around our geographic location, which is in the Denver area, and then Minneapolis, St. Paul here in Minnesota. Ultimately, what we do is we help small businesses implement a proven IT strategy. Over the 20 years that we've been in business, we've come along and developed this strategy that is not the only strategy out there, but we've seen proven results in the strategy with taking a business's goals and aligning them. We see that we're able to remove IT challenges from that organization. Ultimately, you have, as a small business, a ton of other challenges and things that you need to be focused on in your organization, and IT just shouldn't be one of them. So ultimately, we're trying to make IT easy for you and your team. And in doing so, we see that you're able to achieve 4 times more value and productivity from your IT investments. So if that's something that's interesting to you, or you would like to have a deeper conversation, please raise your hand. We'd love to talk offline about that and see if that's something that we can help you with. Otherwise, I know that's not why you're here, so we'll start digging into the content. All right, so here's the #1 question. What is Microsoft Sway? So Microsoft Sway is really a presentation light tool. It is web-based. There is a desktop application that you can download, but unlike some of the other Microsoft 365 tools where there's a web-based application and a desktop application, a lot of times other ones like Teams, they'll have some different capabilities in the web versus the desktop app. Microsoft Sway doesn't, at least not that I've found. It's almost a duplicate. It just looks like the web-based version in an app form. So the benefit is that it is web-based. I say presentation light because although PowerPoint is decades old, PowerPoint is far more powerful when it comes to the animations. You think through graphics, the timings, you can do everything that you can in a Sway with embedding videos and content and everything like that. But ultimately, when I think about PowerPoint, and we even did a session in the past on PowerPoint best practices, PowerPoint is really supposed to be a glorified, like a bulleted list for a presenter to follow. Ultimately, you see a good PowerPoint presentation doesn't have mass amount of text that the attendees are trying to read while the presenter's presenting. It usually has bulleted lists that give talking points for the presenter to go through, and maybe some graphics to help back up what they're presenting. Ultimately, it doesn't tell the story. It is a guide, and the presenter is the one telling the story. What Microsoft Sway allows you to do is actually fill in those gaps. So to give you an example, I'm using a PowerPoint right now. This slide right here, what is Microsoft Sway and when and why you should choose Sway versus PowerPoint. If I were to send this slide deck to somebody, this would not give them the answer. They wouldn't know, there's no context, there's no information. The presenter, me, is the one providing the context around this topic. A Microsoft Sway, as you're going to see, allows us to add a lot more content, and it's a kind of a self-driven presentation. So that's the biggest difference between the two. Like I said, if you're going to be doing a presentation with a presenter, PowerPoint is the tool for you. It is far more powerful. But when you're looking for somebody to be able to self-guide themselves through a presentation, I would highly encourage you to check out Microsoft Sway. So with that in mind, I want to start thinking through what parts of your organization may benefit from Sway. So this is, start thinking through some different aspects in your organization that maybe are repeatable or we don't feel are getting the full benefit of the communication across. Here's a couple examples, like thinking through who here has all company meetings or department meetings. And I'm sure everybody always shows up for those and is there, right? So let's say you had a department meeting and you have 4 or 5 different departments that are presenting: finance, marketing, sales, and everybody has a list of bullet points. Typically, what I've seen in most department meetings is there's going to be those 3 to 4 bullet points. The finance person is going to talk about those bullet points. They're going to add context about that. So, here was our P&L, here's where we are on our goals. This is what happened. We saw that. And typically all those details are not on the PowerPoint slide deck. So there's a couple different things that we could do. We can record that meeting and share that with people who weren't there, which definitely could work, but we could take it to another level where now they have to watch an hour meeting when maybe they just needed to get some context around this one part. The other thing that we could do is send them the slide deck, which we talked about before, but like I said, that's not really going to give them all that context around that. So maybe a Microsoft Sway could be appropriate where the finance director could fill in all that context. They can include Power BI dashboards and Excel sheets and things like that for the user to be able to actually drill into, but still just have it be a bullet point for the presentation. So just an idea of something to think through. How-to documentation. Who in their organization has how-to documentation that's probably in a Word document or maybe a PowerPoint slide? And while a PowerPoint could do a good job, a Word doc with screenshots could be a good option as well. But the problem what we find with that is there's typically a million different versions out there. You're sending a PDF. If you PDF it, you're sending it out, and then there's multiple versions out there. If you're sending the actual Word document or the PowerPoint deck, are they getting edited by other people? And again, multiple versions out there. It's just hard to have one source of truth when you start doing those types of things in those tools. So I would start to think through some of the how-to documentation that you have or need in your organization and possibly explore Microsoft Sway for that. Supplement for video training. This is a great one. We did a session a few months ago on Microsoft Stream for video training, which Microsoft Stream is a great tool for that. But sometimes you want to break that training into a couple different sections. Maybe you want smaller videos with quizzes in between to make sure that users are understanding the content they're going through. Possibly there's third-party or information from a vendor or a link to a website that you want them to watch the video, then research this content, then fill out a quiz, which kind of leads into the next one. There might be, when you start thinking of a procedure or a resource for an employee or a team member that combines videos, links, documents from various departments, external resources, how do you bring that all together? And in the past, a Word document or a PowerPoint presentation might have been the answer, but to what we said before, that has its downfalls as well. So I just want to get our minds started thinking around the types of things or presentations or procedures that are repeatable, that are kind of consistent in our organization that Microsoft Sway might help us out with. So for today's session, the one thing we started trying to think through, what's a challenge that as small businesses we all have? And onboarding a new employee can be one of the most critical procedures that we go through as an organization, both internally because we're investing in this employee, and that employee, that's their first interaction with your organization. So today we're going to build out or start to build out a SWAY that really goes through an onboarding procedure for a new employee. So let's get out of this so that we can get into the demonstration. So I'm going to go through a couple of the highlights of Microsoft, like how to get to Microsoft SWAY and things like that. We did do a session a few months back that dug in deeper to the different ways to create a SWAY. So if you want more information on that, Nate is going to be posting that into the team or into the Q&A panel there so that you can find that link and go deeper in some of this, because we went a little bit deeper into how to create from a Word doc and things like that. So if you want to check that one out, he'll be posting that. But basically, to get to Microsoft SWAY, there's a couple different methods. So the first one is to go to youroffice.com, and as usual, you have all of your applications over here on the left. If you're not seeing it right off the bat here, you can come up to the waffle right up here. We're going to click that. Now I have been recently using SWAY, so it's right there in kind of my quick apps there. If you're not seeing it, you can just click on all apps, and then they are listed in alphabetical order. So you can go down and find SWAY and click on it there. Like I said, there is actually what they call a desktop app as well. So if you go to the Microsoft Store, you can download it from there as well. But you'll see here, this is Microsoft SWAY in the web version, and then I also have Microsoft SWAY in the desk. It's identical. So basically, whatever you're more comfortable working in, I would recommend to do that. So here is the home screen of SWAY. So to get started, we're going to today, like I said, that other session does go through from starting from a topic, starting from a Word document or another PowerPoint. Those are ways that you can get started. So some of this documentation, if you have an onboarding that's already maybe processed out in a Word document, you can start from there. It gives you a good place to start. But for today, we're actually going to create a new one. So I'm going to click Create New. It's going to open it up here. And this is going to bring us into our storyline is what it's called. You can see right up here, there's kind of two tabs, storyline and design. So the storyline, what I would recommend is that you think through the different parts of your SWAY first. Get into design later. We want to actually set up the structure of it. We want to think intentionally how we want things to flow first. So that would be my recommendation, is always start here with the storyline. So the first thing it's going to give you is what these are called cards. You can see the section here. So we are going to go ahead and label this Welcome to Mytech, because we're going to be doing an onboarding for a new employee. Partners. All right, so here is my title. I do want to add a background. So I'm going to go ahead and click here on background, and you can see it pops open a table on the right here. So there's a couple different ways that we can add images. Under the suggested here, this tab, you can see here's all the different ways that we can add. We can add from OneDrive, from Flickr, from Bing, from YouTube. We can upload from my device. One cool thing that SWAY does is it incorporates kind of a web search in here. So if I wanted to find maybe something that was already on my website or on my YouTube channel, I could go ahead and do a search here. And it's returning no results because I have this Creative Commons checked, which basically is saying only give me results that organization has given permission to be used by other people. So if I uncheck that, it's going to give me a lot more results because these are results that could be copyrighted. So just be careful when you're doing those searches to make sure that you're using Creative Commons or you have the license to use them. So I'm going to use this image right here. So I can do one of two things. I can either click it and click add, or I can grab it and just drag it right over into the picture. So now I have my title and with a title picture. So next I want to move on to thinking through an onboarding. HR is usually one of the first places that a new person, a new employee is going to visit, and there's typically a lot of paperwork and things like that and resources that HR needs to share with them. So I'm going to go ahead and click this plus button, and I'm going to select another heading. You'll see what this did is it created another section or another card. So you have your title card, and now we have section 1. And so here I'm just going to put resources. All right, I'm not going to add a picture to this one, but now I want to start creating the different maybe documents or videos or things that human resources would want to share with a new employee. So I'm going to click the plus here. I'm going to show you the difference really quickly here. So if I actually close this card, do you see how the plus is at the bottom of the card versus when I have it open? Now there's a plus inside the card. So think of these as like sections. If I'm creating a human resources section or library, I'm going to want to continue to add inside of that card. If I were going to move on to another department, then I'm going to add on the outside. It will create another section. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to stay inside of human resources. I'm going to click the plus, and you'll see it gives me a bunch of different options here. I'm going to create another heading, but I don't want a heading 1. I don't want it to be as, human resources is my top heading. I'm going to go into text. I want it to be a subheading. So I'm going to click heading 2. And let's do something that I think everybody uses is probably an employee handbook, right? So I want to share a link to the employee handbook. So I think as a new employee, coming on board, one of the challenges that we have is that, there's a lot of resources that human resources is coming to you with. Your hiring manager, there's company resources, and as a new employee especially, they're kind of scattered all over. They could be in Sharepoint, they could be in a network drive, they could be on the website. And it's hard enough as an employee who's been with the organization for a while to kind of know where all those things are. What Microsoft Sway can do is it can go and grab links and references from all of these different places and kind of put it in one central spot. So for our employee handbook, we're going to go, we know that our organization, let's go back to our organization holds our employee handbook in Sharepoint. We use Sharepoint, Mytech internally, as kind of our source of truth for documents. And so in our demo site here is the same thing. So I'm actually going to go to, here's our Sharepoint site, the all MTP 365. This is our demo account. So I'm going to go into that Sharepoint site, and I'm going to go into documents. Just going to open it up here. So what I want to show and what I'm recommending is that rather than, and we'll go back and I'll show you here in a second, rather than uploading that document right into that card, because what happens then? If that document, if that handbook gets updated, you're going to have to remember to go back and update it in that way. Rather, what we've talked in many of our sessions, we recommend having a resource or a document library and link to those documents. That way, when this handbook gets updated in our HR documents library here it is, it's gonna, I have a link to it in that Sway, and you're not gonna have to go into the Sway and update it. So that when we really start thinking about how we're gonna actually just link to all of these documents into one central, the amount of, when we used to go through this, I used to think, oh man, I'm going to have to update that document, and then I have to update this, and trying to remember that can be extremely overwhelming. So this is something that's going to take time to set up that first time, but then after that, it lives and breathes and evolves with your organization. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits. So here I found our employee handbook. I'm going to click over here over the ellipsis to show actions. There we go. It's going to open it up, and I want to copy the link. So it's going to copy the link here, just hit copy just in case. And now I'm going to go back to my Sway. All right, so I have employee handbook here. So I am going to have that as my header, but then let's say I want to write a little bit of text about it. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to or the plus inside the card there. I'm going to add some text, and let's say, here is Mytech's employee handbook. Please review and sign the last page. Return the signed page to your manager, let's say. All right, so a little bit of text, a little bit of instruction. And I'm going to go ahead and just highlight Mytech Employee Handbook here and click the link. I'm then going to insert that link from SharePoint. And now we have that link in there. So now I've created that link from SharePoint. So if we update the employee handbook in SharePoint, it's going to be pseudo updated here in Sway because I'm not actually embedding it into the Sway, I'm linking to it. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so let's keep going with this just to show you a couple other options. So let's say I want to add another subheading. And another thing I want to add is, let's say, a supply request form. So as a new hire, sometimes we need some office supplies. So I want them to be able to request supplies, supply request form. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and add some text here. Please fill out this form to request office supply. All right. So let's say that we do have a form. If anybody's familiar with Microsoft Forms, I'm going to go in there that maybe we already have built out, or maybe we want to build out, that allows our new employees to request office supplies. So here I've built out this form, and rather than, you know, explaining to the new hire, oh, if you go to Forms, or if you go to this document, or go here to go fill it out, I can just make it easy for them by coming here to my form, selecting share. I can copy that link or embed it. Here's the other option within Form. So I'm going to go ahead and click embed and show you how we embed into Microsoft Sway. So we're going to click copy on that. And then I'm going to go back to Sway and I'm going to click my little plus here. I'm going to go to media and click embed. And you'll see here another drop down comes right into the same card, and it shows that I can embed things from Power BI, SharePoint, Sway, and Forms is another one. So I'm actually going to go right in here, click that, I'll click out of it. There we go. And now it's going to actually embed that form. I'm going to make sure I got the front of it there. I don't think I got the front of the code. Let's go back and double check. Copy. In the beginning of it, so I want to make sure I got it all so it works. Oh, there we go. It was just scrolling down. There it is. Okay, perfect. So now I just went ahead and embedded that form right into that Sway. Awesome. So one more thing for HR before we move on. I'm going to come down here, and let's say I have a training video that I want to have them watch and maybe even take a quiz on. So I'm going to go ahead and let's add another subheading. And let's do this on, let's say I have a training video on our mission, vision, and values. Mission, vision, and values. All right, so I want to add media, and I'm going to add a video. So again, a couple different things you can do here. You can upload a video into Microsoft Sway, but again, I highly suggest that you link it so that way when it's getting updated, whether it's in YouTube or Microsoft Stream, it's automatically getting updated here. So I'm actually going to come over here and go to videos, and I'm going to search for Mytech Partners mission, because this search is actually really good at finding various videos within your YouTube channel. So here it is. And again, I can click here and add, or I can just drag it right over here. And I can add a caption on it, and vice versa. I can add a quiz and things like that. So this is kind of how we would set that up. And you can see this is all within human resources. I could then close that, and I could add a new heading that might be about us if we want them to learn more about us. you could continue to go down that. So I actually have one built out to show you a little bit more because I knew we wouldn't be able to get, oops, I just closed out of it. Here we go. We wouldn't be able to get through too much of the how-to with adding all that during the session since we have such a short amount of time. But here is kind of one that I've built out, very similar to what we were going through. So talking through the human resources portion of it, the employee handbook. I included some tax forms, so the W-9 that they need to fill out, direct deposit information. We'll give Mytech apparel for new employees. And unlike a PowerPoint where maybe it would just be a link, here it allows me to provide a lot more context around that too. And I'm going to show you what that looks like here in a second. But I can put the policy of it with a link to the store right in there. There's that workspace supply request form that we talked about, the About Us with a video. I linked our go-to-market strategy in here. This is something that we definitely like to have employees review to understand, what my go-to-market strategy is. You might have other documents in your organization that you want every employee to understand at a high level. So here's a great place. I included an actual Microsoft form or a quiz to make sure that they understand the strategy afterwards. Who of us have complex phone systems or how to set up voicemail or things like that? This is actually a really cool feature where you can, I'll pull it up so I can show you. Right here, we actually keep a lot of this documentation in our Teams channel. So we have like an all company Teams channel, and it's like how to set up a voicemail is right here up in a tab. You can actually, if you click over the ellipse, so if your IT person or IT consultant has this all set up for you, you can go ahead and click this. You can copy a link to that tab, and you could also, sorry, wrong one. I'm losing myself in my tabs here. You can embed that right in there. So here's a link to that Microsoft Teams tab. So you're not asking people in your organization to even change where they're saving things, change where they're documenting things. This is just bringing it all together so that you can access it in one document for that new hire, or a self-guided one source of truth, procedure, repetitive resource. So I thought that was kind of cool. That was one that was newer that I didn't know you could actually link to a tab in Teams, which is interesting. And there's a bunch more here. So let's take a peek at what this looks like, and I'll kind of talk through it. So if we hit, well, actually, let's talk about design first before we get into that. All right, so once you have all your sections laid out here, you feel like you have a good start, that's when I would recommend going to design. Get everything structured first. So we're going to click over into design, and it's going to give us a little bit of a preview here. I'm going to click on styles up in the upper right hand corner. And by the way, the other presentation that we did a few months ago on Sway goes much more into the design deeper. So check that out if you want more on that. But this is where it actually allows you to try different design ideas and things like that. You can actually, we'll go up here, you can do a vertical scroll, a horizontal. You can have it look like your traditional PowerPoint slides. I'm going to leave it vertical here to kind of show you how this ends up looking. So here's my title. And then as we're coming down, you can see I have all the links here that a new employee would want. An employee handbook, the tax forms like we talked about. Here is the apparel information, the different forms. Here's that video that has our mission and our go-to-market strategy along with the form embedded right in here for them to go ahead and take so that we can make sure they're understanding what they're going through. The link to the Teams site for how to use the phone system. And then something else that we do at Mytech is we ask that people schedule time with various different departments to understand how they function and how their role will engage with them in the future. So here was another idea that we could have different departments, and if they're scheduling, for instance, here's Nate. If they were scheduling time with Nate to go through the business development sales, Nate might have some other documents he wants them to review before that meeting, or vice versa. If they were meeting with me, I might say, hey, check out this Microsoft Sway. You can link to other Sways. So that's another thing to think through, is that you could have an onboarding Sway for different departments that all link to an overall user onboarding Sway. So lots and lots of ways to go here, but ultimately what we're trying to get to is that this becomes a one source of truth linking many different documents and videos into one. The last thing I want to mention before we kind of start closing it out here is that because when you're linking from your SharePoint sites, when you're linking from your YouTube videos, your team sites, the permissioning that SharePoint site or that team site has stays with those links and documents. So, for example, if you had particular finance documents or things that you're linking into this Sway, if the individual going through the Sway does not have access to that team site or that SharePoint site, they will not have access to that document. So there's pros and cons there. Just want you to think through that wherever you're linking from, just think through the fact that maybe it needs to be an all company site if it's something like your go-to-market strategy or something like that. But maybe if you only want finance people to be able to access this, or you only want your marketing folks to access this, that's okay to still include in there because the other folks won't have access to it because the permissions stay within those sites. So just a note there to kind of think through when you're starting to build these out. So, all right. So I know time went by super fast. But let's talk through kind of like a summary here of building the Microsoft Sway. So ultimately, Sway versus PowerPoint. Sway can be more interactive. It's self-guided. It's a deeper self-driven content. It's cloud-based, which again, if you go to the other session we did, we talked about how to embed and share all of this information so that it almost creates like a pseudo website. So you're not actually having to share a PDF or something that like I said, could have multiple versions or iterations out there. It's kind of a living site, which is really easy to share. So check out that session to see how to do that. Creating a Sway link to content. It's easy to use. The design element, it's not as, like I said, not as powerful as PowerPoint. It's not as customizable, but for those who maybe are a little nervous to designing or aren't quite sure, you know, they say, I'm not a website designer. This really has kind of that easy plug and play feel where you can build that content, really think through the structure of it, and it will take care of the design work. Ways to make Sway interactive: use the other Microsoft 365 tools, Microsoft Forms, Power BI, all the different links from SharePoint, from Teams, apps. They're all, you can embed them and link to them within Sway. So definitely play with that and see how to use that. And then sharing and embedding. Again, you can link, visual link, you can embed your actual Sway into a website. There's so much capability with sharing. And again, the best part of it is that it keeps all the permissioning, so you're not sharing information that people shouldn't have access to. So some recommended next actions. So we went through a lot. I tried to give more of a high level to really help us think through like how we could use this in our own organization. So recommended is identify maybe some of the challenges that you have or the problems in your organization that you're trying to solve, and start with one and start thinking maybe 1 to 5 ways that or 1 to 5 things in Sway that you could start to actually build out. Start working in your internal teams, involve your power users, and think about how we could start taking some of those procedural or those high-level resource how-tos and turning them into a Microsoft Sway. And just go in and play with it over the next 24 to 48 hours. A lot of the times we take these action items, we write them down, and then we kind of lose them on our desk. So I encourage you in the next couple of days to really go in and play and see what it's capable of. And I think it will really spark a lot of ideas. And then lastly, just join us for our future trainings. We have virtual sessions booked out twice per month through March, I believe. So check those out on our website, mytech.com/events. We've also scheduled our power user groups again. They're back. So we dig in really deep to the Microsoft 365 suite with the power users of your organization. So we have those booked out through June, and those are on the website as well. Other than that, that is the end of the content. I'm sorry we went a little over. There was a lot to cover. I wish I could have even gone deeper, but if you have questions, please feel free to start posting them in the Q&A panel. So we'll get to that. But if you have to drop off now, I completely understand. So hope you can stick around and ask questions. Otherwise, thank you everybody for joining, and we wish you all the best in playing with Sway.
All right, Stephanie, excellent. Thank you for going through that. So there's a couple of questions that did come through that I believe I answered them correctly off during on the Q&A. However, I wonder if you can demonstrate. So one of them is can Sway be shared with people outside your organization? Because it's a website, I know the answer is yes, but can you show that a little bit and show some of those capabilities?
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry, ran a little bit out of time on the sharing, but yeah. So to share, there, like all the Microsoft 365 apps, there's usually like a share button. You'll see this in Forms and everywhere. So you go ahead and click that. And it's very similar to the other applications in the fact that you can choose specific groups, specific people or groups of people to share this with. You can specify that only those in your organization with the link or anybody with the link. So really, if you want to share outside of your organization, this is the one that needs to be checked. Is anybody with the link. Ultimately, additionally, you can set whether they can just view or they can edit. So this is great if you have maybe a group of people that you only want to edit. You could say a specific group that has edit access, and then anybody with the link can have view access, and it will alter this link based on those choices. I'll add one thing I wanted to cover, didn't have time, which is I think it's relatively new because I don't remember this being there last time we went through this, is now you can require a password to view or edit as well. So if you wanted everyone to have a password to get into it, or if you only wanted a password to edit, you could set a password for that. So I think that's really neat as far as, again, if you wanted to really limit who could edit the document, or if there was, for instance, something you were putting together that maybe only wanted clients to be, maybe you were going to embed it in your website and you only wanted clients to have access to it, you can make sure that your clients have the password. And that way, if anybody, you know, just coming through your website saw it, they wouldn't be able to have access to it. So that's another feature that I think would be really useful. So hopefully that shows you and answers that question.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. Another question, there's two other questions that came in. The first one is, can Sway link to non-Microsoft products? The follow-up or the supporting part of that was, our document storage software is not a Microsoft product. So I believe I answered that correctly, but could you either demonstrate that or like, 'cause I know you did some stuff with websites, so can you talk about that?
Yeah. So let's do this for an example. I'll just grab this website as a third party, and let's go back into the Sway. So the answer is yes, by the way. The only thing I would caution you on is that if you had a document management platform, they would have to have permission into that. So like, I'm not sure if it's an actual platform or if it's another web-based tool, but it will probably prompt them to have a login if it is a platform that they need to have a login in. So it's not going to be able to just grab content out of there if they don't have permission, if that makes sense. So let's go back into the storyline here, and I can just give an example. Let's come back down to the bottom. Let's see, I'm going to grab, I'll just add another text field here. So let's say this was even maybe if there was a third party, like let's say vendor training on this tool, check this out. You could very similarly highlight it, just grab the link from wherever it is, hit OK, and then we'll come down to the bottom here, and you'll see when I click on it, it's going to give me a notice that I'm leaving Sway, and I say, okay, that's fine. But then it's just going to pull up whatever that link was. So this is also another way if you have Excel documents or other things that maybe are linked in a like a cloud repository, or like for instance, or an FTP site, that would be another one. Like if you have an FTP site with a lot of this documentation, as long as everybody has access to it, you can link to it and it will pull it right up into a web browser. So hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, that's and thank you, because it reinforced what I thought the answer was, which is that as long as you can get it into a URL, you should be able to link it in there somehow, some way. So one other question here that came in is, any suggestions for a project smaller than an onboarding, for instance, because that's a pretty massive undertaking. So do you have any suggestions for you know, something else Sway might be able to do that could be maybe a test and try and play here in the next 24 to 48 hours?
Absolutely. Let me go back here. So the session we did last summer, spring, it was a long time ago now, I guess, was, I'll pull that one up. So I think this is a good example of a good place to start. So we at Mytech, we have what we call a help portal. So it's an application for our clients to submit when they need help, IT requests. And so we actually had a Word document. We've had, PowerPoint slides on how to request support that we present. Typically, when we have a new client, we'll go and present, this is how you do it. But what happens when, the client has a new employee, right? And they want them to go through that same training, but Mytech isn't coming to present for that employee. So we've actually built out here, I'll show it to you first, and then we'll kind of dig in here, is basically a how to request support from Mytech. So it's just kind of a simple how-to of like what we typically cover, but it can be self-driven. So the user can go through it by themselves without actually having us present. So here's the ways to request support. We talk through, here's the 3 ways that you can request support from Mytech. And then it goes through the different how-to. So step 1, and you can actually, these pictures, you can click on them and expand them to see bigger. So it goes right through step 1 all the way through 4, checking the status of a service ticket all the way through the bottom. And then we have how-to training built in as well. So from our YouTube channel, and then like I showed also in the demonstration, we have a form here. So give us some feedback. How easy was this to follow? Is there anything that we can improve? So to start with Sway, I guess my recommendation was to think through how-tos, because I think an onboarding, you're right, that's a massive undertaking, and really it's starting with those how-tos of like how to use our phone system, how to do this, how to do this. If you documented all those in Sway, you could then even take those Sways and embed them into an onboarding document. So you'd be doing all the work on the side to then maybe eventually, if that's something you wanted to get to. But how-tos are probably the easiest way to start, is just start thinking through a process or a procedure that you do over and over and over again, that you maybe would want to train somebody on or share with somebody, and document that and try that first, because I think you'll learn a lot through going through that.
Thanks, Stephanie. Another question came in. You've given a lot of examples with regard to providing links, but we just barely touched on some of the design capabilities, or to make them more visual. So like, what are some of the visual enhancements you might be able to do with potential links versus just like a hypertext link of the actual words? Can you embed can you like link an image, or link a graphic, or link those kind of things? I think is really the nature of the question. Yeah, just to make it more visually appealing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of go in here and show some. So we didn't really get into the images here, but there are different media types. So we talked about image, video. There's also something called groups. So if you wanted to have, like, for instance, a comparison where you have 2 different images to compare. Let's see if I can pull. Let's just pull a couple images. Or we'll just, like, what if we said phone? That's because we were talking about phones earlier. Let's just find 2 images of phones. Those are some old phones. Let's put that one here. Let's compare that phone to this phone. So this is like a group comparison. I'm going to hit play here to show you, like, here's a cool graphic thing that you could do if you were trying to compare 2 different things. So it has a lot of these, not a ton, but a few fun features like this that you can play with. Additionally, they do, let's see, it was in group here, stacks or grids or slideshows. So as you're coming through, if you had a bunch of pictures, so I think of like a use case for that would be like maybe an internal newsletter where you had an event and there was a bunch of photos from that event that you wanted to share. You could do a stack and upload a bunch of photos. Let's throw a bunch of these in here to kind of show how that ultimately looks. So there's 4 photos. And again, by choosing the different styles. So here, see how it kind of just grid lines a bunch of the videos together, kind of in a gallery. And when you start playing with, when you go into design and start playing with the styles, it will lay them out differently too, depending on which style you choose. You can really customize the coloring and the headers. So there's a lot you can, I take that back. There's not a ton you can do graphically because it is a little bit more structured in the fact that it's really following kind of like a step-by-step. I think that's why it's so good with how-tos. But there is a lot that you can add with images and YouTube videos. Additionally, you can, with that embed button, it is iframe. So anything that you have that has an iframe code, which would be, you know, like we talked about YouTube videos, you can do that. But there are other things out there that you can embed from an iframe. Even like there's some quiz platforms, I know. So anything that's an iframe, you can embed right in there as well. Again, just the note, the permissioning, that if the user who's going through this sway doesn't have the permission to whatever that is, there could be a break there. For instance, if I were to put a Power BI dashboard in here that user doesn't have access to, it's going to come up as an error. They won't be able to access that. So I hope that answered the question. And yeah, I would recommend watching the session that we did last spring, because I went into the design element a little bit more in that one.
Yeah, sorry, I almost didn't unmute myself there, Stephanie. So, so then another one, I think the answer is yes. Can you link from one area of a sway to another area? Like if you used it in place of an FAQ, but wanted to give users the option of jumping to the answer. I wonder if that's like page tags, like you can do, you know, like
good
to
question.
bottom or jump to, yeah, you know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
I think that's what they're asking.
Yes, and again, we ran out of time. There's so much I wanted to share. So yeah, let's go back to this one. So this is that employee. Yeah, this is the one we let's go back to the one that was fully built out, so I can show you better that way. So I don't know if there's anchor tags. I think that's more the question. But let's see, Microsoft. I think it was this one. What it does, which I think is so cool, is let's say, is this the right one? Yes, awesome. Okay, so let's say that, yeah, the user doesn't want to scroll all the way to the bottom, but they know there's something at the bottom. There's this kind of like menu over here, and if you click on that, it actually breaks it down into the different sections so that I know, like, I just want to get to more about how to use the phone. I click there and it will go right to it. I think that answers the question. Like, I know with websites and things like that, you can do anchor tags. I'm not sure if you can do that in Microsoft Sway, where you'd actually be able to say, like, go to this specific area. But I know if you break it down by section, this will allow you to actually, like, just speed right to that section. So I think that answers the question.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, that's the person said yes. Anchor tags is probably the closest thing to what I'm asking. So yeah, so that's probably the best way in Sway to do that. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing that and forgive me if I was trying to scroll through some different things on the Q&A, but so when you do add different images, can you actually make images clickable, like as a link, or are they separate things?
Oh, good question. I'm pretty sure. Let's test it.
Yeah, I thought you were going through some of that. I just wasn't sure if you hit that or not.
Let's add the bottom here. Let's see. All right, let's add an image. Yeah, so let's look for a bird.
So you can feed two birds with one scone?
Yes, my favorite saying. That's a pretty bird. Okay, we'll do that. And then you can, right here, click the link. So I think maybe it adds a caption. Let's see. This link, and let's have it, just try and go to our website. If I can type. Let's check that out, see where that ended up. So I think, yeah, the actual picture, it's more of like what they call it, like a light box. So a lot of times when you add a picture, when you click on the actual picture, it enlarges the picture, which has its benefits. But that's what I thought. I don't know if it will actually link, but you can add a text, kind of like a caption over it, and that can link. That answers the question. Let me dig in. I might dig in offline to see if there's a way. I wonder if you could add some HTML in there to actually make the image link. That could be possible, but I haven't played with that yet, so I might dig into that.
Yeah, great question. So yeah, and they did mention that I think iframe is one of the things they were referring to previously. So yeah, that's good. Yeah. So. Well, great. Well, that is all the questions we have, and so I appreciate that follow-up. And I did, Stephanie, as you noted, I actually included a bunch of other links in the Q&A from the Sway, the previous PowerPoint that we did. I actually, because you touched on forms, I forgot you were going to do that. I included the one we did on forms, and also you referenced our 20-year our go-to-market strategy, so I linked to an article we recently did on that. So all that'll be in the follow-up email as well, but I decided to reference that there's a bunch of supporting content that can help digest and take advantage of Sway. So
yes, awesome. And as always, if you have questions, or in the follow-up email as well, we have a Microsoft form that asks for feedback. So if there's more of this that you would like us to dig even deeper in, let us know. Like I said, with 30 minutes, it's tough. You just scratch the surface of this, and onboarding is a big topic, but we just thought it was a good one that we all kind of experienced that pain with. So yeah, thanks so much for everybody for joining today, and we'll get that follow-up email out shortly, and hope to talk to you soon. Thank you.
Have a great one.